Hi, Algebra 2 class, or Algebra Geometry 2 class. I'm now going to go over the solutions for the practice test that you're going to have tomorrow, so follow along with me and this will all make sense. I've also excluded a number of questions that I put on the practice test because I feel maybe that I haven't spent enough time covering them in class, and you'll see which ones I exclude. Alright, so let's just start with the first one. So this one over here says a vertical line has the coordinates 5, 4. So keep in mind, this is a vertical line has the coordinates 5, 4. Write down the equation of this line. A lot of people, I think, have problems with this because they don't understand, like, what are they supposed to do with such limited information. So the best thing I can suggest for you to do is always draw a sketch. So the first thing you should do is just draw your XY axes right here, right? And basically what I've said is that there's a coordinate 5, 4. So let's just say, for example, this is 5 and that's 4 and there's a point right there. Now it says a vertical line. A vertical line is a straight line down. So in other words, it just goes like that down. So what is the equation of this line? Remember, vertical lines are always expressed by x equals something. And in this case, it's x equals 5 because it goes through the x coordinate of 5. 5, 0, it goes through that. Or 5, 4. So what's the equation of the line? It's simply x equals 5, and that's the solution. It's really that simple. Write the coordinate of the point where this vertical line intersects the x-axis. So in other words, it intersects the x-axis right here. This is 5, 4. This point is 5, 4. But this point is where it intersects the x-axis, and that point is 5, 0. So write the coordinate of the point write down the coordinate. It's simply 5, 0, and we're done. Simple, straightforward, easy marks. Okay. Another line has the equation 2x plus 3y equals 4. Find the point of intersection between this line and the vertical line. Okay, so one thing that you might want to do, you can do this if you want, is you can sort of change it into y is equal to mx plus b form. So if you want, the first thing you can do is 3y is equal to negative 2x plus 4. And then we can see that y is equal to negative 2/3 x plus 4/3. So how would that look like on the chart, on the graph right here? So let me just use a different color. So we know that the slope is negative 2/3 and the y-intercept is 4/3. So in other words, it probably will go something like this, right? So the question is asking, where will the vertical line, the green one right here, intersect with the red line right there? So what we know right away, simply because that the vertical line is expressed as x equals 5, we can just plug in x equals 5 into this equation right here. And once we plug in x equals 5, we can solve for y and figure out what that is. And figure out what the coordinate is. So let's just do that. So say, for example, I'm just use yellow. So since we have, like I said, x equals 5 right here, we can just say 2 times 5, because that's the x value, plus 3y is equal to 4. And let's solve for this. This is equal to 10 plus 3y is equal to 4. And if I subtract 10 from both sides, I get 3y is equal to negative 6. And if I divide by 3 on both sides, y is equal to negative 2. So the solution is x is equal to 5, which we basically got from there, and y is equal to negative 2. So the coordinate is 5, negative 2. And that's our solution. So that's the point of intersection. So 5, negative 2 is this point right here, where the red line, this equation, this line L, intersects with the vertical line right there. So let's do the last question. Find the coordinate where L intersects with the y-axis. So L intersects with the y-axis. So let's go back up here. So remember, as we said that vertical lines are expressed by x equals 5. But what about horizontal lines? Horizontal lines are expressed by y equals something. And oh wait, sorry, that's not the question. The question said y-axis, sorry. So if a vertical line is expressed by x equals 5, the y-axis itself is expressed by, since it goes through the point 0, the y-axis is expressed by x equals 0. That's how we write the y-axis. And if we were thinking of writing the x-axis, for example, the x-axis itself is y equals 0. But anyways, we don't need to deal with the x-axis. The question said the y-axis. So vertical line, even though it says y-axis, we write the equation of the y-axis is x equals 0. So all we have to do here is find the coordinate where L intersects the y-axis. So the equation is 2x plus 3y equals 4. we said that the y-axis is simply x equals 0. So all we have to do is take the 0 and plug it in there and solve for y. So in other words, it's 2 times 0 plus 3y equals 4. 0 times 2 is 0, so that just cancels out. So y is equal to 4 over 3. So our point of intersection is 0, 4 over 3. So our point of intersection is 0, comma, 4 over 3, and that's our answer. Okay? So hopefully that made sense. Okay, next question. Solve the inequality 2x, yada, yada, yada. So we have to solve this inequality. So let's solve it by expanding. So this is 2x plus 2 minus negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Negative 3 times the negative x is positive 3x is less than or equal to 5x minus 3. Let's simplify by grouping. So this is 2x plus 3x, so that's 5x. And positive 2 minus 12 is negative 10, is less than or equal to 5x minus 3. What you want to do is you want to bring all the variables to one side. So let's subtract 5x from both sides. So basically we get negative 10 is less than or equal to negative 3. Now, all the x's are gone. So what that means is when the x's are gone, we have to look at the statement itself. So let's look at this statement. This statement says negative 3 or negative 10 is less than or equal to negative 3. And this is a true statement. Okay? Now, some people got confused by, well, what about the equal to? How can negative 10 equal to negative 3? Remember, but what you have to remember is that this really means less than or equal to. So there's an or condition. So it fails the equal condition, but we don't care. As long as one of these two conditions is met, we state that the statement is true. So negative 10 is less than negative 3, so this statement is true. And since this statement is true right here, the solution is all real values. All real values. And what that means is that any value of x in the real number system will fit this equation. So if you pick 1 for x, 2 for x, 3 for x, it doesn't really matter. This will always work for all real values of x. And that's our solution for number 2. Okay, fill in the following numbers into the appropriate regions of the Venn diagram. So let me just scroll down a little bit so you can actually see the diagram a bit. Okay, so these are the numbers, and this is the diagram. So the entire thing is the real value system. Here is z, which stands for the integers. Here is the natural numbers, which stands for, basically it's a subset of the integers, and here is the rational numbers. So the first thing you should sort of see is try to eliminate possibilities, because this is kind of a trick question. So let's just do a quick review of all the number systems. So remember that the natural numbers are from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way to infinity, and they are within the integer set, which is basically from negative infinity to positive infinity, all the integers. So in other words, non-decimal numbers, and they in turn fit within the rational numbers. And if you remember, rational numbers can be expressed as a over b, where a and b are integers. So in other words, anything that can be expressed as a fraction of integers is a rational number, and basically that is all within the real, let me just draw this properly, right? So that is all within the real number system, and this shaded part that I have here, this shaded part that I'm just sort of shading right now, that we said was QC. So this part is QC, which, oops, let me just draw, this is QC, which we said is the irrational numbers. So, things like pi or square root of 2, those are all irrational numbers. So they would all go in this region right here. Okay, so based on this, let's sort of eliminate some possibilities. We just basically said that all the integers must be inside the rational numbers. So if we look over here, here's the integers and here's the rational numbers. All of this must be inside that. So in other words, anything that's outside of it does not exist. There is no, for example, this space right here simply does not exist because all the integers have to be inside the rational numbers. So there can never be a number over here. So this is sort of a trick question. You're never going to put any numbers over here. Now let's look at the natural numbers. The natural numbers fit inside the integers, which fit inside the rational numbers as well. So again, all the natural numbers, anything, so if we look at Q over here, if we look at N over here, anything that's sort of not part of Q, right, is also not, we're never going to have a number over there. And one last thing to look at is that the natural numbers are inside all of the integers. So what that means is any part of the natural numbers that's not part of the integers is not valid too. So for example, this part right here, I'm going to maybe shade in a different color. So this part right here, right, is outside of the integers but part of the natural numbers, so this part does not work. So really everything else is fair game. So the shaded parts that are blocked out, there can never be a number over there. Okay, so now let's figure out what numbers we can fit over here. So -1 is not a natural number, but it is an integer, right? So -1 would go right here. So we're done with that. 7/8, it's obviously, a fraction. So, I mean, even -1 is a rational number itself, but we want it in the best place, so it is an integer, so that's why it also fits right there. 7/8 is, sort of fractions, and they're both integers, so that's where 7/8 would go. 2 is a natural number, and it's also part of the rational number, so they both intersect, so 2 would go right there. Pi is an irrational number, so if you look over here, this QC part is all that shaded part over there, so everything outside here is QC. So pi, I can put here, I can put there, it doesn't really matter, as long as it's outside of Q. So, and then E is also, it's actually an irrational number. You guys didn't know it, it's 2.718. It's called like the natural number, but anyways, it doesn't really matter. E is also an irrational number, so it would go out there. So anyways, that's how we do this problem, and that's the solution for this problem. Find the point of intersection of these two lines, number 4. So how do we do this? So if you're doing elimination, the first thing to remember is that everything has to line up. So these are not lined up. So let's line them up first. So we have 2x minus 3y is equal to 14. If we want to line everything up, this has to be -x plus y is equal to -6. So if we're going to line this up, okay, so we can't cancel right away simply because these numbers are not the same. The signs are different, which is great because that helps us cancel. The numbers are not the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply the second one by 2. This entire bottom equation by 2 because I want these two to be the same. So the next thing to do is I'm going to multiply the bottom by 2. So it's 2x minus 3y is equal to 14. And it's -2x plus 2y because y times 2 is plus 2y. And then -6 times 2 is -12. And what we're going to do is just add these together. So those cancel out because 2x minus 2x is equal to 0. -3y plus 2y is equal to -y. And 14 plus -12 is 2. So what we want to do is divide both sides by -1. And so what we get is y is equal to -2. All right, so we got y is equal to -2. We got one of the solutions. We need to find x. So, or one of the coordinates, we need to find x. So I'm just going to plug it into the second equation. So instead of y, I'm going to put -2 minus x is equal to -6. And then basically this becomes -2 minus x equals -6. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So -x is equal to -6 plus 2, which is equal to -4. So -x is equal to -4. You divide both sides by -1. So x equals 4. So our solution is x equals 4, y equals -2. So the point of intersection is simply 4, comma, -2. And that's our solution right there. So that was the solution for number 4. Let me just scroll down here. Number 4 is right there. Okay, number 5. The function f is shown below. So I think some people had some confusion when I said f. When I just say f, that means this whole graph is, I'm just collectively calling it f. All right, so there's nothing really fancy here. All it just means is that this whole function is just called f. All right, so, and if we look over here, we have sort of 3 holes, and there's actually a single dot right above there, and it's the point of that dot is 5, 6. Okay, so the question said find the domain of f. So if I just say find the domain of f, just find the domain. You're not even expected to find the range because I didn't state it. So let's find the domain of f. So remember, the best way to do this is just draw a number line, okay? And find the lowest value for x, remember, because domain means x. So the lowest value of x is, as we can see, -2, and it's an open circle. There's nothing above it, nothing below it, so it's an open circle. So we keep going, we keep going, we keep going, we keep going this way. So we keep going to the right, we keep going to the right. And what do we see? we might think that, oh, at 5 there's an open circle. So we might be tempted to think, oh, there's an open circle at 5. But keep in mind that at the same time 5, there is another point right there which sort of closes it. So because that closes it, we can just, there is no circle at 5. So sorry, this was -2, and this is 5. So I don't even have to write 5 over here because it's a closed circle, but I'm just doing that just to demonstrate that 5 is included. It's not excluded. There's a closed circle, not an open circle. So anyways, I keep going this way, I keep going this way, I keep going this way, and then I notice that at 8 there's an open circle. There's nothing sort of blocking it or anything like that. There's no other point, so there's an open circle at 8. Right? So if I had to shade this area, it's basically everything from -2 to 8, but not including -2 to 8. So if I had to write the domain is x is element of reals, okay? And it's from -2, right? X, and so it's not equal to, because it's an open circle, all the way to 8, and that's our solution, right? If we had to do the range, so let me just do the range just for argument's sake if I ask you that on the test, for example. So let's just say we had to do the range. So the range, you would just look at the y direction. So start from the lowest point. So if we look over here, the lowest point is -3, and it's an open circle. So it's an open circle at -3. So we keep going, in other words, we keep going, but what we observe is that at -2, there's a hole right here. But keep in mind that even though there's a hole right here, we're looking at this entire line. We're looking at this entire line. And so even though there's a hole here, there is another point right here that basically helps 2. Sorry, I said that was -2, but I really meant that was 2. So 2 is included. 2 is included. I'm just going to write that. You don't have to because it's already included right there, but I'm just going to write that just for argument's sake, just so that's clear. So then we keep going up, we keep going up, and we keep going up, and we see that there's a hole at 4. There's nothing else blocking it. Right? There's no other point in this direction, so there's an open circle at 4. Okay, and you might be tempted to think, oh, maybe there's there's a line over here in between. There's nothing in between. So there's nothing in between 4 and 6. Well, what about 6 itself? 6 is actually a dot, so we're going to consider that point. Right? So it's just a dot right there. So in other words, if we had to shade this, basically it's everything from -3 all the way to 4, and then we just jump all the way to 6. So it's everything from -3 to 4, and there's nothing in between 4 and 6, but we just do a jump from 4 to 6. So if I had to write the range, it would be y is element of reals, okay? Keep in mind, range was not asked, but I'm just doing this just so that's clear. It's from -3, we don't include -3, all the way to 4, which is right there. And then we say or, because this is another point, and we say or y equals 6, okay? So that way sort of includes everything. I hope that made sense. Okay, so number 6. So this was a word problem, and let's try to see how we can figure this out. The Alpha car rental company rents out their cars at a fixed initial charge of $50 plus 30 cents per kilometer. So if you remember y is equal to mx plus b, this should be screaming b. This is the y-intercept right here, because anything that's a fixed initial charge is usually the intercept. The intercept is fixed. Now, plus 30 cents per kilometer, that should be screaming to you a rate. And anything that sounds like a rate, like per something or anything like that, that should be screaming to you a slope. So it means we have 30 cents for every kilometer. We have a change of y, which is 30 cents, for every kilometer, which is a change of x. So anyways, that's sort of your clue right there. The beta car company rents it out for a fixed initial charge of 30, so this is the y-intercept for the beta, plus 50 cents per kilometer, so that's the slope, because it says per, it sounds like a rate, and that should be your slope. For both companies, cars have to be serviced after 1,000 kilometers and must be returned to a local rental depot. So this information will be handy a little bit later, so we'll see how in a second. So anyways, A, write down. So whenever they write down, it's usually an easy question, so try to just pay attention to the details, see if you can figure this out. So write down the cost of renting C. So they've defined for us what the cost of renting is, and they call it C. From the Alpha Rental Company, so we're just looking at the Alpha Rental Company, and in terms of the number of kilometers driven. So we have to find some expression for the cost in terms of the kilometers driven, which is D. So we have to express C in terms of D. So as we said before, if the cost is C, right, our fixed cost is $50. So no matter what, we're paying $50. Just to rent the car, whether we drive it or not, we pay $50. And then how much do we pay per kilometer? It's 30 cents. So it's plus 0.30, and it's per kilometer. So in other words, we noticed here that D is the number of kilometers driven, so it's 0.3 D. So this is how we express the equation of the line. So the cost is $50 initially plus 30 cents per kilometer. So for example, if I drove 1 kilometer, it would be $50 plus 30 cents, which would be $50.30. If I drove 2 kilometers, that would be 60 cents right here. So $50 plus 60 cents, so $50.60, and so on and so forth. So this is how we define the cost for the Alpha car rental company. So $50 initially plus 30 cents per kilometer. Now B, write down the cost of renting. So basically it's almost the same question, but now for the Beta car rental company. So if you go back, if we look back over here, we see the initial charge was 30, and they're charging 50 cents per kilometer. So in other words, their cost is $30 initially plus 50 cents per kilometer. So if we observe, this is 30 plus 0.5 D, whereas the Alpha was 50 plus 0.3 D. So observe the difference over there. And that's it. And also this says write down, so it's usually like a very, very simple question. Find the cost of renting a car where it is economically neutral to choose either company. I think this confused a lot of people, economically neutral to choose either company. What this means, what this statement means, is that find the cost where it doesn't matter which company you go with, you're going to get the same mileage. You're going to be able to drive the same amount of distance, right? So what would that cost be? So in order to find that cost, basically, and that cost just means that it doesn't matter which company you go with. You can go with Alpha or Beta, it'll cost you the same, so it doesn't matter. That's what economically neutral means, which means to choose either company. You can go with either one. It doesn't really matter. So that's going to happen when the costs are the same, right? Like when the costs are the same. If the costs are the same, it doesn't matter whether you go with one guy or another. So that's when happens when it's C equals C. So the cost of one company is equal to the cost of the other company. So the cost of the Alpha, if you remember, was $50 up front plus 30 cents per kilometer. And the cost for the Beta was $30 up front plus 50 cents per kilometer. So this is really, when you think about it, it's just an intersection of two lines. This is one equation, this is another equation, and the way I did it was substitution. I basically said C was equal to C, so I said C of one and then the cost of the other, and I equated them together. We could have done elimination as well. We could have done C is equal to something here, C is equal to something there, and then, multiplied by something and crossed out terms. But I just chose not to do that. I just thought the easy way, honestly, is if you do substitution in this case. So let me just solve this. So I can subtract 30 from both sides. So it'll be 50 minus 30. And then I can subtract 0.3 from both sides. So it's 0.5D minus 0.30D. So this is 20 is equal to 0.20D. And now, if you want to solve for D, D is simply 20 divided by 0.20. And if you use your calculator or if you can do some mental math, this is actually equal to 100. So we don't stop here. You might think like, oh, maybe my answer is 100. But the question said find the cost. And remember, D stood for the number of kilometers. So what this means is D is actually 100 kilometers. So if you drive 100 kilometers, and if you are only driving 100 kilometers, it doesn't matter which company we're going with. But that's not what the question asked for. The question said to find the cost. So if you want to find the cost, you got to take this D and plug it back in here so we can get the cost itself. And it doesn't matter which company you go with because it's economically neutral. The cost will be the same no matter which company you go with. So basically, let's just say if I choose the Alpha car rental company, so that was 50 up front plus 0.30D, right? If I plug in D right here, which is 100, it's 50 plus 0.30 times 100. And what that is equal to is simply 50 plus 0.3 times 100 is 30. And so 50 plus 30 is 80. So basically $80 is the cost, where if I'm willing to just spend only 80 bucks, then it doesn't matter which company I go with because I can drive the same amount of distance and I can pay the same amount of money. All right, so I hope that question made sense. All right, so part D, write down the range of costs for the Alpha car rental company. So for the Alpha car rental company, what this means is the range of the costs. It means what is the lowest amount? What is the lowest amount to the highest amount that I'm going to pay? Highest amount. So AMT just means the highest amount. So lowest amount, AM, my handwriting is a little bit bad here, but let me just change that here. So lowest amount to the highest amount. All right, so the lowest amount, in other words, no matter what, you're going to pay $50 for the Alpha car rental company. Because even if you don't drive, remember what they said if we go back to the question. The question said it's $50 initially plus 30 cents per kilometer. So even if you don't drive at all, no matter what, you have to pay $50. Okay? Now for the highest amount, if you observe, the last statement was for both companies, cars have to be serviced after 1,000 kilometers. So that means you stop driving after 1,000 kilometers. So we have to figure out how much do I have to pay once I've driven 1,000 kilometers, right? So here's our cost. So let's figure out what that is. So let's just go back to D. So I know that the max, like so this is $50. The max amount I can drive is 1,000 kilometers, right? So C is equal to 50 plus, this is my cost function, 0.3D, right? So it's equal to 50 plus 0.30 1,000, because remember, D stands for the number of kilometers. So that's equal to 50 plus 300, which is equal to 350. So in other words, the max that I'm going to pay is $350. So my lowest amount is 50, and my highest amount is $350. So how do I write that as a statement? So remember, we're talking about costs, right? We're talking about costs, so it's going to be C. And so C is in between $50, so you're going to pay the least is 50, and the most that you're going to pay is $350, and this is how you write the range of costs for the Alpha car rental company. All right, so number 7 and 8 included Pythagoras and perpendicular lines. So for that reason, I've excluded number 7 and 8. So you can safely omit that. Questions like that will not be on the test. I just want to make sure that we just covered the material that I talked about. For some reason, I assume that you guys have done Pythagoras, but it seems like half of you have and half of you haven't. So I don't think it's fair for everyone. So I'm excluding questions like 7 and 8. So we're just going to move directly to 9. All right, so here's the question. A function g is shown below with the points a, b, and c. So a, b, and c. A straight line connects a to b, so that's a straight line. So this a is not that a, it's just the article a. Connects a straight line from a to b, as well as from b to c. So there's another straight line from b to c, and that's all they're saying. So let's do this. Okay, so the first question said, find the range. Okay, find the range of g. And once again, I define this function as g. Okay, I define this function as g. So that means this whole thing we just call g. That's it. That's all that means. We just call this function g. Nothing special about that or anything like that. All right, so find the range of these. So since it's in the range, we're going to look in this direction, right? And as before, let's start with the lowest value. We start with the lowest value, which is -3. Boom. So there's no other value. This is -3, so we go here. All right, so then we keep going up. So we keep going up, we keep going up, we keep going up. We notice that when we're around 4, there's an open circle. So we might be tempted once again to think that there's an open circle over here. But keep in mind that just because there's an open circle over here, there's another point right here. So which means this is filled, right? So basically what you have to do, keep in mind, just look at the whole line, and as long as there is one point that is filled, then we fill it, okay? Even if there's an open circle. So this point 4 is filled, okay? So then anyways, we keep going up, and we see that there's an open circle B. There's nothing to the left and right blocking it, right? There's no other point. So at B, at number 6, there is an open circle. So if we had to shade this part, basically from -3, we go all the way. We don't have any broken parts. It's basically from -3 to 6. So if we want to write the range, it's y as element of reals. And then we go from -3, y, and we don't include 3 because it's an open circle. And we go all the way to 6, and that's that. Okay? Hopefully that makes sense. Find the slope of AB, okay? So we can find the slope of AB, so in order to find that slope. So the way we do it is, remember, it's rise over run, right? So this is the rise, it's the change in y, and this is the run, okay? So the change in y is 6 minus 4. What's 6 minus 4? It's 2. What's the change in the run? It's from 2 to 3. So what is that? 1. So what's the slope? Simply 2 over 1. So the slope of AB, so I write m and I put a subscript ab, which means the slope of ab is simply 2 over 1, which is equal to 2. And we're done. Simple, easy question. All right, so, okay, and then part C, which said the segment of BC is perpendicular. Perpendicular lines, once again, this was just like number 8. So I'm just going to exclude this question because it just doesn't seem like everyone knows this concept. So we'll go over this concept again in class, but for now, for this test tomorrow, I'm going to exclude it. So don't worry about anything that says perpendicular or even Pythagoras. Okay, so let's move to number 10. Okay, so number 10 seems like a complicated question, but this is a type of question that I expect you to do because I know you guys know how to do this kind of problem. So anyways, let's just go read the question and figure this out. So number 10, a vertical line goes through the point -2, -3, and a horizontal line goes through the point 5, 4. Okay, so it's a lot of information. So the first thing you should do is always sketch it out. Like, I can't stress that enough. If you draw a little diagram of how things are supposed to look like, then it'll be so much easier to do. So much easier, I promise. Okay, so let's sketch this out. Basically, I have a line. Oops, this should be white. I have a line right there. And then I have, sorry, that's my y-axis, that's my x-axis. And let's just draw these lines. So here's my x, here's my y. Okay, so -2, 3. So -2, -3, that's right there. So this is -2, and this is -3. Okay, and a vertical line goes through that point. So here's my vertical line that goes through that point. Okay, it says vertical, so you can't miss that. All right. And a horizontal line goes to the point 5, 4. So let's draw 5, 4. So 5 is going to be here, okay, and 4 is going to be right here, let's just say. So 5, 4 is right there. And it says a horizontal line goes to that point. So let me just draw a horizontal line like that. So that's my point right there. So the question is, write down their point of intersection. So in other words, write down this point right here. So if you observe here, this vertical line, it goes to the point -2, -3. So one way to express this vertical line is we can say, remember, vertical lines are expressed by x equals something. So it's x equals, it'll be obviously the x coordinate, so x equals -2. Okay, I'm just going to erase something here because I think this is going to confuse you. So x equals -2. X equals -2 right there. Okay, and how do we express this horizontal line? Horizontal lines are expressed by y equals something. And since it goes through the point 4, maybe I'll just draw the 4 over here. Since it goes through the y-intercept of 4, we express this as y equals 4. Okay? So if we want to find out their point of intersection, we know that all points in this line have a value of x equals -2. All points in this line have a value of y equals 4. So the point of intersection is simply -2, -4. Because that x-coordinate is -2, and that y-coordinate is 4. So the solution to this line is simply -2, 4. And we're done. That's it. It's just as simple as that. Okay. The line L, 2x minus 3y. So maybe this was a source of confusion, but the line L has an equation, 2x minus 3y equals 8. Right? So I'm just calling this line, like it's calling someone a name. Like I could call this line Larry if I wanted to, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to call it L. So this line 2x minus 3y is labeled as L. So anyways, intersects with a vertical line. Find the point of intersection. So the line L, I'll just use a different color. The line L is really just any line. Like I think it really looks like this. So it's a line that looks like that. Okay. So if it's a line that looks like that, and it intersects with the vertical line, it's like it says over here, find the point of intersection. Well, what was the equation of the vertical line? We said that the equation of the vertical line was x equals -2, so we need to find this point of intersection right here. So if we know that x equals -2, we just plug that in here and solve for y, right? So let's just do that. So I just need a little bit more room. So since we said that it's, since we said that it's x equals -2, so all we have to do is plug that in. So 2 times -2 minus 3y is equal to 8, right? So this is equal to -4 minus 3y is equal to 8. And what we can do is solve for y, so we can add 4 to both sides. So if we do that, if we add 4 to both sides, it's -3y is equal to 8 plus 4, so which is equal to 12. So y is equal to 12 divided by -3, which is equal to -4. And that's what y is equal to. So the equation of this line, the point of intersection, the coordinates of the point of intersection are x equals -2, because remember, that's how we express the vertical line, and we can see it over here, and the y value is -4. So the point of intersection is simply -2, comma, -4. Okay? All right, so numbers, so C I think was maybe it can look like the toughest question, but it's actually quite straightforward, and we'll just go over that right now. So the intersection of all three lines forms a triangle. Find the area of the triangle. So let's sort of look at this. This is why I said draw a sketch. It is so important. It is so important to draw a sketch, okay? Because without a sketch, you can't even see what this looks like, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy this thing. All right, I'm just going to see if I can copy that, and let me see if I can just paste it right here. So edit, paste. So I'm going to move that right there. Let's see if I got everything. Let me just extend the page. Yeah, there you go. I got everything. I'm just going to erase one little thing. I don't need that line. Okay, so anyways, this is basically the diagram that we have. All right, and so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to erase a few things just so I have some room. But remember, this was the vertical line, right? And we have some sort of intersection points. So we have basically this point right here. This coordinate right here is -2, 4. This point right here, which we just found out, was -2, -4. Okay, and we don't have this intersection point. We were not asked that, so we didn't find it out. But if you draw all three, right, you can observe that we have this triangle that forms right here. This triangle that forms right here, and we're asked to find the area of that triangle. So if we want to find the area of that triangle, if you remember, the equation for an area of a triangle is half times base times height, right? So let's say that this is our base. Okay, oops, sorry. Let's say this is our base. So this is B, and this is our height, right? So basically from here to here is our height, where those so it's really just 3 points that we have to focus on: that point, and that point, and this is our height, right? So how do we figure out our height, and how do we figure out our base? But before we do anything, before we can get all these values, let's make sure that we can actually figure out our base. So in other words, the last point that we need is the intersection point here. So where the horizontal line intersects with this blue line over here, right? If you recall, the equation of the blue line was, actually, I forgot myself. I think it's 2x plus 3y equals 8. 2x minus 3y? Yes, it's 2x minus 3y is equal to 8. So the blue line right here is 2x minus 3y is equal to 8. So 2x minus 3y is equal to 8. So how do we find out the point of intersection? So remember, it intersects with this horizontal line, which we said, the horizontal line, we said was y equals 4, right? So if y equals 4, all we have to do is plug that in there and then figure out what that coordinate is. So if we do that, so it's 2x minus 3 times 4 is equal to 8. 2x minus 12 is equal to 8. 2x is equal to, if I add 12 to both sides, 8 plus 12 is 20, right? And therefore x is equal to 20 divided by 2, which is equal to 10, right? So in other words, the point right here, this point right here, the x coordinate is 10. The y coordinate, which we said is equal to 4. So the coordinate right here is 10, comma 4. Okay? So, all right. So remember, now we have to go back to our finding the area of the triangle, which is half times base times height. Let me do the height first, because it's a little bit easier. So, okay, so the height, if we observe, is that this point here is 4 units above the x-axis, and this unit here is -2, -4, is 4 units below the x-axis, and they're on the same vertical line, so we can just measure directly. So this distance is +4, and this distance is also like an additional 4, so the height in total will be 8, right? So that 4, the distance from 4 to -4 is actually 8, and that's how we get the height over there. Now let's look at the base. Let's look at the base. If we look at the base, everything over here is 4. This is -2, 4. The y-coordinate is 4, and the y-coordinate is 4. But if we look at this 10 over here, that means from the y-axis, we are 10 units this way. Let me just use a different color, maybe to express that. So we are 10 units this way. So this is from the y-axis to this coordinate, this point of intersection here, it's 10 units. And what's the distance from the y-axis to the -2? Well, it's also 2 units, right? Because from the y-axis to -2, it's 2 units. So what's b in total? B in total is simply 10 plus 2, which is equal to 12, right? So h equals 8, and the base equals 12, right? So all we have to do right now is plug this into our equation for the area of a triangle, which is half times base times height. So it's half times the base is 12, and the height is 8, right? So it's basically, well, 12 times 8 is half times 96, and that's 48 square units. And the reason why we write square units is that we don't know what units these are in, right? It's not specified what units these are in. So basically, since we just say square units because we know area is always expressed in square or something, or centimeter squared or meter squared, so we say squared units. So that is our solution for this one, and we are done with the practice test. So anyways, hopefully you guys get a chance to see this and you're ready for tomorrow. And again, I will try to be as fair as possible and just include the things that everyone knows and that we've taught in class. So in other words, no Pythagoras and no perpendicular lines, but everything else is fair game. All right, so make sure you do the review, make sure you do the worksheets that we've done, and if you do everything, you should be set for tomorrow. All right, take care, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.